Good afternoon. The world is witnessing a new era where contentious issues, once the domain of diplomats and negotiators, have become powerful levers in the hands of global leaders. Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, at the helm of Russia and China, are not just reacting to crises like the Iranian nuclear file or the Ukrainian conflict, they are actively transforming them into instruments of international pressure. Their strategies are reshaping alliances, challenging Western influence, and redrawing the rules of engagement in global politics. As these leaders deepen their partnership, the boundaries between negotiations and strategic maneuvering blur. Are we entering an age where sensitive issues are less about resolution and more about leverage? Welcome to In Depth. Spectators highlight how Vladimir Putin sees diplomatic opportunity in the Iranian nuclear file, especially in the context of Donald Trump's shifting US policy. Russia's readiness to offer diplomatic or informational support to Trump on Iran is less about aiding Washington and more about advancing Moscow's own strategic interests. By positioning itself as an indispensable broker, Russia aims to extract concessions, undermine Western unity, and reinforce its own relevance on the world stage. This approach exemplifies how contentious issues are wielded as diplomatic tools, with Moscow seeking to turn every negotiation into a chance to strengthen its hand and challenge US dominance. Well, today we are joined by two guests offering unique perspectives on this evolving global landscape. Rami Qalyoubi, high school economic lecturer speaking from Moscow, and Benny Kwok, international politics expert from Hong Kong. Good afternoon to you both, gentlemen, and welcome. Let's start with you, Mr. Binian. How does Beijing justify its increasingly active diplomatic engagement in both the Iranian and the Ukrainian crises, and how might it leverage its role to reshape the balance of power in its favor on the global stage?
Okay, thank you for inviting me. So first, let's talk about the Ukrainian crisis. So initially, I would say China and Beijing is in a little bit embarrassed position, because what Moscow did is violating the principle of Beijing on the sovereignty, on the sense of sovereignty, because most of the country would see Russia is taking the territory from Ukraine, and but on the other hand, because China is Russia is an important ally of China. China have no other choices but have to stand on the side of the Russia, so that that could help China to stand on the opposition side of the United States. So I would say for the Ukrainian crisis, one point is it is a golden chance for China to take trying to advance its interests, especially in Central Asia, because in the past, Central Asia is on the sphere of the Russian Russian power, but now because of the shrinking Russian power, particularly the Central Asian states would like to be more independent, trying to keep distance from Russia. Then China could expand its power, especially economic power in the Central Asia, by forging close partnerships with, for example, like Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and other Central Asian states, which could, I would say, to try to weaken the Russian power in those areas. On the other hand, China is taking these chances to try to avert the China-Russian relations. So in the past, Russia would be the active side. That is, Russia is the so-called big brother of the Beijing. But now, because now Russia depends on the China's military and the financial assistance, then we are seeing a much more balanced China-Russia relations, and even Russia would even more depend on the China's assistance.
Right.
So we're seeing China is now getting more positions in terms of the geopolitical politics, and China now being not just the important ally of the Russia, and even China and Russia are sitting in the same, I would say, the same level of the position. So for the Iranian crisis, I would say first, China is the I would say the only, not just the only, the most important buyer of the Iranian oil, and also China is the most important economic trading partner for Iran. So now being as the in the Middle East, because of the Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Israel are now all standing on the opposition side of the Iran, I would say the China-Iranian relations is much more stronger than before. That is, China could help Iran to advance not just the economic cooperation, but also China would take its China-Iran relations as I would say as a stepping stone for helping China to advance its Middle East interests. So not just the China-Iranian relations, and we are seeing the China also advancing its economic partnerships with the Saudi Arabia, UAE, and other Middle East countries. Right. Of course, it could not be compared with United States, because the United States have
no, we'll come to that. We'll come to that, Mr. Kwak.
Okay.
Let me turn to Mr. Qayyoubi. And how does Russia view the current alignment with China regarding contentious issues like we told Mr. Kwak here, Iran and Ukraine? Hello.
Questions of ideology in terms of establishing a multi-party world order. And at the same time, there are few disagreements on some questions. Now, Russia is strengthening its relations with the United States, and which is China perceives as a risk, because Russia might invest its restored relations with the United States to improve some deals with China, because during the last few years, China could impose its conditions on Russia in questions of trade and economy, because China actually was the main window for Russia to escape from the influence of sanctions. So that's why now there are some sensitivities in Russian-Chinese relations. Regarding Iran, a couple of years ago, China played a crucial role in restoring the relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And this is how China proved that it's not just an economic actor, but also a political one. So, and actually, a couple of years ago, China presented a plan for regulation of Russian-Ukrainian crisis. But at the same time, China is neutral in military terms, so because Russia does not support neither Russia nor Ukraine. China provided some humanitarian help for Ukraine, but no military support. So that's why China might be a good go between Russia and Ukraine on one side, but on the other side, China is now occupied a lot with trade wars with the new American administration and probably would need some time to get back to Russian-Ukrainian issue.
Right. Turning here to Mr. Binney, and you were speaking about the United States and the China engaging with the United States. Now, what are China's main motives for positioning itself as a mediator in Ukraine, and how does this serve its broader strategic interests?
In terms of the Ukrainian crisis, okay, first, China itself as a peaceful, I would say the peace negotiator. But of course, it is quite hard for China to do so because, okay, first the United States, Ukraine, and the Europe does not believe China could advancing the peace agreement between the Ukraine and Russia as well, and also. As I have said, because China is an important ally of the Ukraine, important ally of the Russia, and we're seeing many of the evidence, many data, many news about China providing the military assistance to Russia, and remember the DJI, the biggest drone manufacturer, is from China, so we could believe that is many of the drone technologies, many of the components that is being used maybe in the Russian military and maybe some in the Ukrainian territory, in the Ukrainian militaries, are direct or indirect from the provided by the DJI, no matter it's from directly, indirectly, legally or illegally. So I would consider, and I would see China is or even leveraging, utilizing crisis and try to test whether the drone technologies could be applied in the coming or potential military warfare maybe in the Taiwan Strait or maybe South China Sea against the United States or the United States allies in the Asia Pacific. So that is what I think about the China in the Ukrainian crisis. So the peaceful resolution is even many of the analysts maybe within China they would think they are projecting the peaceful resolution between the two countries, the Ukrainian and the Russia. And but I would think. Not many people would think so. So, in terms of the geopolitics, so the great powers are advancing their own interests. They advancing their own agendas, and China is also one of them.
Exactly that what we were speaking about. How would that leverage the role of China or play it in the interests of or for its own interests and in its own favor? We'll get back to you, Mr. Binney. Let me go here to Mr. Qnews. And to what extent is the Iranian nuclear file a tool for Moscow to pressure the West and gain strategic advantage?
Actually, Iran is an important partner for Russia, but not an ally. If we speak about Russian allies, this applies only on Belarus and North Korea since last year, when Russia and China signed an agreement of strategic partnership. So, but now Russia had some trade with Iran. There is military technical cooperation. Someday Russia provided Iran with S-300 missiles that helped Iran to protect itself from possible Israeli strikes for a while. Also, there is cooperation in the field of energy. So they are partners but not allies. And during the Syrian crisis, it was quite clear that Russia and Iran had different agenda. Russia's aim was to impose itself as a global power, while Iran had a regional project, confessional project. So that's why I repeat that this is rather relations of partnership rather than alliance. But there are a lot of perspectives. For example, Russia completed building Bushahar nuclear plant in Iran after withdrawal of German Siemens company after the Islamic Revolution in 1979. So these are quite developed relations, and they might be used as a card in relations with the United States, as Trump can demand Russia to reduce the level of relations with Iran to get better conditions for Ukrainian regulation. So it's quite possible.
So we're speaking here about a tit for tat. Get
Actually,
back.
yes.
Going to Mr. Binney, and how do recent military exercises, in particular Russia and Iran, reflects China's approach to global security?
Okay, China, Russia, and Iran have regular military exercises in the Persian Gulf. So these three nations, okay, normally they have one strategic common goal, that is against the U.S. hegemony. But practically, between China and Iran and but practically they have this common goal. But practically, when it comes to the real terms, it is another picture. What I'm saying that is between China and Iran, of course, the importance on the bilateral relations is buying the Iranian oil and also the economic assistance. For China for China to trying to leverage Iran into the Middle East politics is much more difficult, especially in terms of military terms, because China does not have much in this other than the Djibouti, the so-called training base in Djibouti. And that there is no military involvement for LA, China, and also for the Russia and the Iran, much more history of the providing the nuclear technologies. But other than that, Russia and Iran has no more, I would say, no more partnerships. Much more, I would say, much more.
Yes, but my question was, how would China's engagements in exercises reflect its approach towards the global security at large?
Okay, I would say that it is just for it is the China involvement in the military exercise in terms of the global governance or in terms of the global politics. It is to show the trilateral alliance between China, Russia, Iran is one of the strongest anti-US alliance.
Right.
I would say it is just the to show to the Washington, okay, these three countries are the most strongest anti-US, the three countries that have the strongest anti-US stance.
Right.
Other than that, they have no particular any meaning, because you are seeing the Persian Gulf, you are seeing the Suez Canal. It is still under the
No, excuse me.
control of the yes.
Excuse me. we're not speaking about who is in control of what, because also
Okay.
Egypt and China have a great and very important strategic relations, and I guess Egypt is in full control of the Suez Canal. Let me get here to Mr. Qalyoubi.
Okay.
And how does the Kremlin interpret U.S. attempts to re-engage with Iran under Trump's shifting U.S. policy? Mr. Qalyoubi. Mr. Qalyoubi, are you still with us? So until we get again Mr. Qalyoubi, let me here turn to Mr. Binion. What does Xi hope to achieve by agreeing to this call with Trump now, especially as tensions over trade and essential minerals have escalated?
So also, may I clarify, you mean what Donald Trump emphasizes in relations with Xi Jinping? Is it your question?
Yes. My question is simply the engagement of the Chinese president, and what does he hope to achieve by agreeing to this call with Trump, or the call he made with Trump, particularly as those tensions and definitely over the trade in tariffs and essential minerals and all these have already escalated?
Okay, first, as we all know, Donald Trump's stance is sometimes A, sometimes B. What strategy is what Donald Trump is applying for is trying to make his opponents is very difficult to guess what he wants to achieve or what he wants. So you're seeing between China, for the recent trade disputes between the United States and China. China is in terms of the negotiation table. China is on the passive side. United States is on the so-called active side, trying to pressure to China to accept what the United States want. So of course, between these two countries, they are having, I would say, the structural and very structural differences, because what these two economic powers, they have a much difficult, I would say, economic goal, and also they are not just about the trade dispute. They are not just about the so-called trade deficits. It is about which country is going to control the so-called strategic sectors.
Right. So, Mr. Bini, what challenges does China face in convincing the Western powers that it can be a constructive player in resolving contentious international security and definitely security issues and economic partner?
Okay, I would say the biggest challenge for China is now facing, that is because China doesn't want to be a global factory anymore. And what the West in the past want China to do is to be a global factory. But what the West want China to provide cheap and efficient raw material and the labor forces to the West-dominated global economy. But under the rule of Xi Jinping doesn't want China to be that dependent role anymore. Xi Jinping wants China to be a real, so-called real global economic power. Xi Jinping wants China to have much more say in the shape of the global economy. China wants to have the independent, so-called in some strategic sectors. So you're seeing China is working very hard to build its own EVs industries. China is working very hard on building its own AI and semiconductor industries. These actions are shaking the Western, especially the United States, led the hegemony in the global economy. So now we're seeing the struggling between the United States and China on the which country is going to having more influence on the global economy, because for the high tech, for the EVs and other sectors, only these two countries have the economic power to do so. So I would say what Xi Jinping is now doing is just, I would say, between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, I don't see any short-term solutions, and I don't see any we're not seeing any solutions in the very short term, because
remains to be seen, Mr. Kwok, what China wants at this upcoming stage, whether it wants to engage more with the West, Europe and other countries, and take more allies or be able to engage, or what else does China want? We thank you both, Mr. Rami Al-Qalyoubi and Mr. Benny Kwok, for your valuable insights. And I guess as the world's power centers recalibrate, contentious issues are no longer just crises, they are the chess pieces of a new diplomatic game. That concludes today's episode of In Depth. Many thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for more coming up on Qnews.